That is, I'm done.
So we're ready. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. Kurt Sollenberger, as our chair of the Resources Commission, is going to be sharing a little bit about some thoughts, some early stages. I'll let you describe exactly kind of where we are on this, but we're just kind of wanted to share some information with all of you.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I guess, every year, Resources comes up with sort of a wish list of things that we're thinking about when it comes to upgrades to the church. One of the things that kept coming up, after, I'm not sure how many years ago, we had a tent. You know, it was sort of at the end of COVID and during construction phase, I believe, and we needed some additional space. I was really initially, I thought $6,000 for a tent for the summer. That's crazy. That's a poor use of our money. But in the end, it worked out really well. And so it got us just thinking about, and in the meantime, people ask us every year, I've got a question from someone in this room about if maybe we're going to do that this summer, you know, and so last year at the end of the year, Resources was making our list, and we thought that maybe we'd start to investigate the possibilities of having a pavilion built over on the Memorial Garden side of the property. At that point, we actually went so far as to get a preliminary estimate for a very bare bones pavilion without really thinking too much about it, just as a starter point. And at that point, we thought, well, there's more involved. I'm sort of old school when it comes to the way to do things. And so I can be a bull in the china closet and say, why can't we just do this? Let's just do it. You know, back in the day, we would have got the Good Brothers and you know, Johnny Martin, and we would have just slapped this thing up, and it would have been no big deal. But you know, we're in 2024, and it's a different era, and so there's always much more involved than you want to think. We took the idea that in January, we took it to the board retreat, just as an idea. We're always sort of tasked to look at the CAT survey and how things will benefit the church. And we thought from a resources and a building perspective, you know, this could give us an additional space where, you know, a different kind of space for groups to meet and would be beneficial. So it was well received there. And I mean, I think a bunch of us on Resources have talked to various people about this and always gotten just the concept in general, just a, you know, very positive response. So we decided at that point that we needed to get more information about what all was involved. At that point, we talked to Jeff Mumal, who's been great help throughout all of this. And he recommended Dave Christian, who is an landscape architect. And what Dave was tasked to do was create a feasibility study. And so at that point, we took the idea to board and got approved $4,200 to have this feasibility study created. Dave would look at deed restrictions, water and sewer lines, zoning permits, stormwater management plans, building permits, all of the infrastructure related to building this project. And as you know, it's a more substantial piece than I guess I would have guessed. One thing that made it complicating for us is that we actually have two separate properties, which I don't think most people really knew or even now know. We have the main church property, and well, here it's up there now. If you can see right here, here is our line. These are sort of the trees right by the driveway going in. So this is our main property, and this is the additional property. When you look at building something, you cannot build, would be called an accessory building, so it cannot be on a standalone lot. So we looked into, one of the things Dave talked, we met with the borough and the borough solicitor, who said a deed of consolidation is one way to go, which would, versus totally, having someone come in and survey the lot and creating a whole new lot. This is a very simple way and a very cost-effective way that I believe Jim and Barry had investigated when we were talking. We would have had to do it had we done the full building project that we had talked about. And so we eventually, we eventually just moved forward to do this, just because I talked to Jim and Barry and Paula and who had been involved in that project, and we thought, even if this never comes to fruition, it was something we should do for the future. So anyway, I sort of got ahead of myself looking at that diagram there. Why the need for a pavilion? One of the things that when we had looked at the initial building project, people were really excited about a different fellowship space, an additional fellowship space, maybe just for us with additional kitchen space. Obviously, that didn't work out. This would be a way that we could have a separate space that could be used for many purposes. I just made a general list: church picnics, small groups, special events, weekly coffee and breakfast. I really enjoyed, on a really nice day, on a Sunday morning, standing outside, or sitting, people would bring some pastries and we'd have a donut and have a cup of coffee and sit around the table out there. This would be an option. Bible school, Bible school would be it would really make Bible school easy. Because we sort of move tables in and out and in and out, and it would sort of just be a great central location for something like that. We've had situations with, part of our issue in this church is that we share space. And so we don't always have access to our own space. One question I received when talking about this with some people is, well, we just spent all this money on the fellowship hall, which is true. And the kitchen down there. That was, we should have done that years ago, number one, but that is also space that we share with daycare and nursery school to some extent. And so on a normal day, we really don't have access to that. So we've had funeral meals in the hallway out here, which I guess works in a pinch, but it is a little dicey. Now, if we do a pavilion right, I mean, that could be an option on a nice day. I understand not everyone's going to want to do that, but that would be another use for the building, because it would have a small kitchen and bathrooms. We could rent it out to people if we chose to do so. Obviously, that would add another aspect as far as the management of the building, but it is an option. And also our tenants, I guess we don't envision this as something that our tenants would have full access to, because what sort of happens when you have tenants is that they treat things like tenants, and so there's more upkeep. So I think for special approved events, though, there's no reason that they couldn't use that space as well. So these are just some of our visions and resources as far as how this building could be used. Part of just going back a little bit to the CAT survey, one of the big things was, to try to bring in young families and reaching out to the community. And I guess we vision, the The fellowship hall is great. It's very nice now, but it's a different kind of space. This would be a more casual kind of space where if you just wanted to have pizza after church, you could do so. And kids could play in the playground, and run around versus the fellowship hall where it's, not as conducive to that. So I think when we're looking at it from that perspective, we felt, it would be a great thing to have. Jason, should I stop at any point and ask you the questions so far? I don't have a whole lot more, or we could open up at the end.
Yeah, it's up to
Do
you.
you want to go to
I
more?
moved to this
Why don't we
slide.
go to some of the pictures here as far as what we've sort of envisioned? So, we had visited some, there are multiple churches in the area that have pavilions. I stopped, I went to some smaller pavilions. I went to Lidditz. Lidditz has just a wide open pavilion by their new playground. Which is basically, it's just a concrete slab and a roof with some picnic tables. Very nice and would do the trick in some instances, but I guess not what we fully envisioned. George Snavely was gracious enough one day to take me on a tour of his old stomping grounds and took me over to the Anvil Church Pavilion, which is out in the countryside. It's a beautiful spot. And I also got to see where he grew up and went to school. So it was fun. And where all his relatives live, or still, maybe some still. But that was a fun morning. But anyway, we came away with that. I also took my tape measure along on some of these, and we're looking at size. And some were maybe, I saw some smaller ones, maybe 20 by 40, 30 by 60. The Anvil Pavilion was 40 feet wide by 80 feet long. And this is the basic version of their, it is sort of a copy of what they had. They had a fireplace, but I'm not sure in this day and age we need a fireplace and the issues that could create. I guess our thought was, if we're going to do this, that we wanted to do it right, and so you could have an open pavilion that would be cheaper. Now, for instance, the estimate we got last year for a bare bones open pavilion was around, it was $80,000, but that didn't include a concrete pad or excavation. So it would have been over $100,000 just for a bare bones. And that doesn't include any of the plans and infrastructure requirements. Now, you wouldn't need water and sewer if you didn't have bathrooms in the kitchen. So that does complicate things. But basically, that our vision here is, and this is, like I said, very similar to Anvil's. There's a decent sized kitchen, 2 small bathrooms. These are garage doors on either side so you could have the impression that you're outside. You open up all the garage doors, and then obviously you'd have your gathering area here. I think we were sort of envisioning that as more of a 3-season room, facility. Versus year round. I guess you could use it if we thought about putting some possible gas heaters in the corner. But this would be a basic cinder block building. So if we wanted it to be a year round building, you could do that, but you'd have to insulate it, and you'd have to have another system. And I guess since we've been through this last whole process, we weren't sure we wanted another heating and air conditioning system. If we would just have on-demand heat that you cool fall day to get you through, and then during the winter time, we probably wouldn't use it. Jason, maybe you could go to the color. Well, here are just some renderings that Jeff did for us. Thank you, Jeff. There are many ways you could go with this. You could go cheaper and do just a plain siding building of some sort. You could go more substantial and try to sort of make it blend in with the church building and maybe add some brick, same color. So what we have here, and Jason, maybe you could go to one of the color pictures. That's the roof. That's
Zoom. Then you want to be thinking that's the roof. Great elevation. Sides, back to this. Oh, I can't move.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so here, this is just a color drawing that Jeff did for us, adding some brick in. Doug would like to see it be all brick, but that, masonry is very expensive, as we'll talk about later. So this was just a basic, idea, and that all of this could change. This would just sort of give us an idea of of what it would look like. And the placement, Jason, sorry, can you go back to the
Where you went? Oh, the site?
The actual site drawings. Yeah, so once again, we're consolidating this into one property. Here's your memorial garden. The stormwater management plan is a very big part of this. And we've talked about various options for that. You can sort of have an underground garden, or you could have, what do they call it? A water garden, Jeff? That's more with plantings and
Rain garden.
a rain garden. That's, and that would probably appeal to a lot of people here as far as having a rain garden. Because you have to account for the water that's coming off the roof. We're envisioning maybe a patio of some sort, wherever it ends up, and a walkway that would go across, and here's your portico entrance to the church. We were also thinking, and like as far as a church picnic, Rick and I haul grills in here for the, Rick does most of the hard work. If we had some kind of patio somewhere where we could put a couple grills, that would also give people the option to use it, even if we wanted to have a grill here full time. And people wanted to have cookouts here, we'd have that option as well. As far as the Dave Christian developed all of this, and we basically, we're well within the limits as far as all of our setbacks. There's plenty of space for this. It's still, our thought was that we didn't want to be too close to the property line way out that way. We wanted to keep it closer to the church, because if we had a big group gathering, Jason, we were talking bathrooms earlier, you may need access to the church as well. So we'd be right by the church. And so that space would work well. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, I'm really glad you talked to Ann, though. We were there 11 years before we came.
Yes.
And we had funerals in there a couple times.
Yeah.
Where we had plenty of times where we had people sitting along the outside of the doors, and as long as the PA system was good, we were fine. We had the doors open, for them to see, and you could watch the kids on the playground.
Yeah.
I'm glad you saw that, though.
Right.
What about tables? We had separate tables at South Ashland than we did at church.
Yeah, I don't think we had gotten that. We could go a bunch of different, directions with
They were
tables.
old ones, but.
Right, well, actually, Anvil sort of had
They got new
these
ones.
sort of cool old ones that sort of
That's
folded
right.
up,
Yes,
and
we
they
did.
could
We
put
got
them in
new
the
ones.
corner. So if you wanted that space to run around and be, I guess, you could do that. And then they had a bunch, you folded them out. They're almost like a fold-out picnic table with individual seats, but George, I took some pictures of those seats, but, I think they're probably 50 years. They're old, I believe, so I'm not sure. Yes.
What about storage in that building?
There is a storage area. It's right here, and I guess we could, I think Anvil has their storage over here behind the bathrooms. I think their storage area, and this was all kitchen, this could be configured any way you want it to be. I believe this storage area was not here. This was all kitchen, and then this was storage, which might be better since it's sort of be on the back of the building. Yes.
And I just think that's a good point about tables. You're gonna have to want tables at one point, whatever activity. There might be a way of putting storage in there so you can store the tables there.
Sure. Yeah, Anvil just sort of stored theirs they actually have a fireplace here. Fireplace or wood stove, George? One or the other. it doesn't matter. But they sort of but you're right. I mean, it could be either or. No, I mean,
heard it. That Chickies Pavilion is very similar to that too. And they always just stored the tables out at the end where you were just saying
right,
on racks, on
Yeah.
carts, similar to what we have downstairs. Stack
right. Part of our issue now when we do anything outside, and this was our issue with the tent, our tables were not in great shape, our tables and chairs at that point, but that was the end of our tables and chairs when we stored them outside for the entire summer. And so we've been very restricted as far as the new tables that are down in the fellowship hall are to remain in the fellowship hall, and not to go outside. And so we actually kept some of the old tables and we have them now in the shed. And so we brought them out like for the picnic, and they could be, and for Bible school, it's not very conducive to get to them. Daycare has a lot of stuff in that shed. So we sort of have to pull daycare stuff out in order to access it. So it would, we would anticipate getting, I guess our thought was round tables sort of like downstairs and then just storing them wherever we stored them.
Yeah, just a couple of things. This is meant to be conceptual.
Right, right.
In order to get a price to see whether you have enough money in your wallet. All right. Two, if you go back to Camp Soterra, Jason, you might want to correct me on this. Back in the family camping center and the G sites, Barry, didn't you build something? Barry here? Yeah, we built something like this that has garage doors down, a picnic area. I think it has bathrooms, kitchen, whatever.
Yeah.
So if you're going back there, you can, hey, here's what it looks like. It gives you an idea.
Damn, sorry.
Yeah, one thing I think that would be possibly help with the heating and electric is put a few solar panels on the south side, and it would provide some heat. And it would be, you'd have the upfront cost, but over, 40, 50 years, it would way
Yeah,
more
that
than
could be
pay
an
for
idea.
itself.
That's a good idea.
And, you would have, help supplement the heat in the winter,
Sure.
electric heaters.
Well, I mean, I guess theoretically, we could have some baseboard heaters in there too, if we wanted to. It just complicates it.
Because right now I've heard us describe this as potentially a 3-season. Is that how, one of the terms we've
That's sort
used?
of how we were looking at it. I mean, if you have cinder block and brick, you're not really gonna have much. I mean, in between that, what do you have, Doug? I mean, if we have siding, you insulate in between the siding?
So you have no insulation in the sidewalls.
Yeah.
The ceiling, so designing block buildings is not what I do for a living, but I made it a block building because you can paint the inside, it's a finished surface, all right? I put roof trusses on and put metal ceiling in it. All right, it's white, it's metal, it's painted, it's clean. You can wash it down. If you wanted to, you could insulate it. And
It wouldn't be a bad idea to insulate the ceiling.
yeah,
Even on a hot summer day, the heat wouldn't tend to come down as hard.
correct. And if you're going to use it on those marginal 3-season days where you have infrared propane heaters in there, yeah, it definitely would work. It definitely would work. You could do that. But it was just, this is kind of like down and dirty. What makes it presentable?
We were, yes,
Wouldn't you get more people in if you did rectangle tables and like the lightweight plastic, white?
probably.
Yeah.
It depends on, I guess, we've always, one of the things we addressed when we did the fellowship hall was the sound dynamics of group gatherings with older people and not being able to hear each other. And at a circular table, wasn't used on, but John David isn't here right now.
Sometimes you
so-
can't hear across.
Yes, we could fit more people if we just had long rows of chairs, but then the dynamic as far as talking is more difficult, Julie.
Well, I was thinking about sound, right before you brought this up.
Right.
And when metal roof, imagine metal,
And concrete floor, yeah, that's good. That's
Well,
100%.
And if you, and once again, if you'd insulate it, that would probably help to sound a little bit. The garage doors, I guess I wasn't envisioning totally metal one. We were thinking maybe the ones that have glass in between them, so they look a little nicer, but they'd also let light in if you're in there and it's a little cooler and you wanted to shut it.
And if the doors are down, it still feels open.
Right, right. And once again, you know, as Jeff said, this is conceptual, so those are pretty simple things to address down the road. And we were really, at this point, we were told, you know, we're gonna spend this $4,200 to do the study to sort of, and Jeff has graciously donated all of his time, thank you, Jeff. To, you know, to bring it, you know, to the body and see where it goes. So anything else?
Just a
Yes,
couple of comments about Anvil, as we were there.
Yeah.
The doors were great because if the weather turned and you had an event planned out there,
Right.
you could bring, if it was windy,
Sure.
you could still bring the doors down or bring the
Right.
doors partway down. There was that option.
Yeah.
I do recall it being somewhat snug in there. We filled it up pretty good and our congregation wasn't as big as this one.
We would do Easter sunrise service there.
So at that point, how many people do you think you would add in there?
But summertime, when we did the
150?
picnic, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned that, when the doors went up, there were, sometimes people would sit like on the outside looking
right.
in, almost like there was.
Looking to the
room to
entrance.
expand.
And they would sit or stand around in the kitchen to eat sometimes to be able to be. a part
Was
of it.
there
It was wide
concrete
open.
that extended outside of the building itself or
There was concrete,
Concrete beyond,
so there was.
beyond?
yeah. And there was also a fire pit out there.
Right.
Because
that's the other thing I was just thinking with overflow on the sides if the doors are up.
Right, if there would be some.
Added,
Kind
let's
of
say patio.
concrete apron around the side.
You can put concrete apron in, now you cross another bridge.
Yeah.
And that's called impervious surface and runoff. And then you take the chance of running to the next phase of what you have to do for site development. So this is a catch 22.
Right.
Trying to do it as cheap as possible and put your limit inside the.
Yeah,
Oh,
we fit, there are different versions of these stormwater management, you know, the minor, major, you know, super major. Yes,
I was gonna say that it was also a very popular, we talked about, renting it for community use or whatever. And Anvil Pavilion, as I understand it, it's very popular. I mean, every year the day was announced when you could start signing up for next summer's event.
Surrounded by open.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
beautiful,
The
yeah.
tricky part of that is,
Used to
now,
have the softball field right there. George
Yeah.
said.
of course, with Anvil, as you said, the pavilion is out in the country, it's not near the
Right,
church.
right.
This would be near the church, which then would, we talk about funerals or having a funeral, have luncheon. And if it's leased already or signed up and rented by somebody, and that is the other side of that. good
Well,
thing,
yeah, we would.
Is that if somebody has, because you can't really plan that far ahead. for-
Right, yeah, on the one hand, it's nice it's out in the country sometimes. On the other
Yeah.
hand, it's nice if it's right at your church,
Right.
it's a little more
Yeah.
accessible.
But-
One of the things about tables yet is if this is a nice enough space to do some things like that, I mean, you know, if it's the kind of thing where people can do that gathering, you might find out you have other things happening in the fellowship hall at the same time.
Right.
That's where the duplicity would be helpful if we can afford that expense.
Right.
Tables out there.
Yeah, and as far as multiple things happening, I mean, that's I guess a good problem to have unless it's a funeral, but. So, I mean, yeah, Crystal and Brooke are pretty good at keeping track of where everyone, you know, Crystal, she keeps us in line, yes.
In terms of the cost, you said it would be over $100,000 just for the building without the kitchen.
I'm getting there, I'm getting to that.
That was the first building.
We
That was the bare minimum.
That's part of the budget.
That was the open.
That's my,
That's the womp, womp, womp.
Right.
I think I had, on my, notes here, I sort of had all the uses, as pros. And certainly, the cons of this project is the cost. Jeff had, well, we got our feasibility study, which sort of gave us our basic figure. I believe it's the overall cost, including his cost, which we've already paid of around $80,000, just to develop that
Before you do anything.
before you do anything.
Yeah. Very, very low.
Permits, plans, architectural fees, feasibility studies, site development. Jeff plugged a lot of numbers into one of his programs, and we initially were hoping, I think when we started talking about this, we were thinking in the $300,000 range, but it's more in the mid $400,000 range. That, depending on how you, I mean, as Jeff described it, you could, because I was like, well, what are ways that we can make it cost less? I mean, everything costs more, especially if we do a lot of masonry. Masonry is very expensive too, and concrete and just the, you know, the excavation and everything. And so, but the difference between, like, for instance, if we just did a bare bones pavilion and the pavilion itself costs us, you know, $100,000 and the development costs us 180, we're in 180 grand for a picnic area, basically, that doesn't give us much real, I mean, place you could hang out, but it doesn't give us all of this. So yeah, it would be costly. There are ways, I thought, well, what if we made it smaller? And Jeff said, well, yeah, you can pay. It's not going to make that much of a difference. We might still.
If you made the thing 100 square feet small, you still have the same bathroom, same kitchen, same garage, same amount of windows, same entrance door. So your cost to decrease or increase is not by taking the total cost and dividing it by the square footage. It's how do you make it cheaper? What part don't you want?
I mean, Jeff tried to, do we want to put that up, Jeff? Put it up.
Sure.
Yeah, put it up, Jason. I mean, this gets pretty much in the weeds as far as numbers, but I mean, it's everything from professional fees to municipal fees to construction costs to, you know, sewer, water. I mean, there's a fee for everything when it comes to the borough. We do have a connection with the water authority, Del Becker, so maybe there are some variables here that might be able to save us some money. But yeah, I believe in the end, this comes out to what, $479, Jeff?
Somewhere around there. So you can see, you get all but 80,000 and you didn't build a building yet. Right. But then what I did is I did take the basic plan I had and went out to an electrician that we use, a plumber we use, and said, hey, what would it cost us to do this? And they were gracious enough to give us an estimate. I got prices on siding and roofing and all that kind of stuff. Did some estimating. Got prices on garage doors. Got a price on the masonry work. So this stuff isn't just me pulling it out of my back pocket. I did go and get some prices on this stuff, and then as in any project, you take the cost and you say, all right, what did I miss? So I'm going to add a percentage on for that, and then this is 2024. Well, maybe this won't get built to 2025. Well, now add another 5 to 10% onto it. So yeah, you keep on going down, and you see that 470 to 480 on the lower right hand corner.
So yes, that was a bit of a shock to us. We weren't anticipating that figure. However, you know, nothing, as Jeff said, nothing gets cheaper. It's only going to get more expensive. The only real way that we know is to have actual building plans designed, actual, you know, it has to be ADA compliant. It has to be everything.
Has to because this is a public building, it has to comply with uniform construction.
Right.
So that's when you get an architect.
Right. So, and we did get an architect, a quote from that. And so what would that cost us? Another 8,000?
Maybe not quite.
Not quite, to have actual And at that point, then you could put it out for actual bids, and then we would know the real figure. And so I guess from a resource perspective, that's why we're having this meeting. We've made, I believe we made that decision at a board level to go forward with the feasibility study. And I'm not sure what the Constitution says. That's a joke from the board meeting. I love the Constitution. But, if we think this is a good idea, if we move forward and do that, or if we take that, to a council vote to approve that and have another conversation about it, which we could do. The next question, and I'm getting to how do we finance this, but Jim and Don, go. Did you have something? Thought I saw a hand. Yes.
479, that's the, all the prelims, the construction, and, I can't see all the fine print.
That's all in plus a
The
contingency. Plus a
Furnishings
contingency.
is up on top of 407, furnishings for,
Do we have furnishings in it? We have some
I
kitchens.
had an allowance for kitchen,
We had an allowance for
just for
kitchen.
kitchen only. And let's just talk about the kitchen. The kitchen is a sink, counter space, receptacles for crock pots. You get into a stove and that stuff. Now that puts a whole nother level of
But I
what
think
you have to do.
I think you put $10,000 in for that,
Which
which would cover a stove, and I don't think, we don't envision this being a real serious commercial kitchen.
They're under equipment, kitchen equipment. They have to be
$66.
$6,600.
Okay.
That one I did. For
Yeah, so yeah, add $5,000 for tables and chairs. Yeah,
Thanks.
but I guess I figured at that point, I mean, we didn't. Yeah, it would be a little more Jim.
I wanted to correct an impression I might have made. When we said 150, we're talking a big max thing. If we had events that were just inside the pavilion, if we had 80 people,
Right.
we were packed. And so I just want us to be clear that it'll be,
All those tables.
it's not the space that you think of if you think of 150 people.
Well, I
That was
believe-
when we expanded out, or out to the cemetery
believe-
corridor.
What's the square footage of the Fellowship Hall, John? Because we fit 150, 200 in there sometimes, don't we? George, I don't,
200 is sort of our max.
200 is a max.
when we had the 40th anniversary of the original building, we had over 400 people in there. But those were rectangular
Right.
tables from
Right.
the stage
Elbow to
to
elbow.
the back,
Sure.
hardly able to walk between the rows.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was kind of the extreme, but it could be done.
Part of our problem was that we had picnic tables in there.
Right,
And that takes-
right.
And that takes more
Yes,
space.
right.
Yeah.
The chairs you can get.
I think we were thinking 150 could fit in there comfortably, but,
Yeah, no,
I mean, and once again, despite this, the water runoff plans, et cetera, it can be whatever we make it to be. I just think we felt that for most occasions, this would be enough space. For the all church picnic, it would be tight.
Right.
But people will be
But then
overflowing.
we're gonna have overflow, and I hope it's a nice day and people are sitting outside.
Right.
But, we also don't want to build something that's way too big and not use the space and have to take care of it.
Two other things right quick.
Sure.
One, refrigerator was extremely important. In fact, we had two of them. And secondly, Mike Swank, Rachel Booker Swank's husband, was a key figure with all of
That
that.
was it.
And so if you want information more about Anvil, he would know the detail as an engineer. He's an engineer. So he would know.
I had one other comment, a question, I guess, kind of different angle. Any talk or discussion about ever needing to increase the memorial garden? Because
There are no containers in the Memorial Garden,
Right.
so theoretically,
okay.
that could go on
It's all
for,
reuse. Okay, just wondering.
so there are no, in the Memorial Garden, you are not, I mean, you may remember a specific spot, but there are no markers of any
Right,
sort.
and no containers,
And no containers, so,
which I realized when I was
so,
there for an
right.
interment at one
And
point.
part of our thought when we were also going back to the whole deed of consolidation thing was, that allows us not to, we couldn't sell that property, but how could we sell the property with many of our loved ones,
Yeah.
lying there. So, I think that's why we decided to move forward also with the deed of consolidation and also, just to look to the future for possible other uses for that land. So yeah, the elephant in the room is the cost, obviously, truly.
Wonderful project. It would be wonderful to have. What would we do with that close to $500,000? If, in the bigger picture, in terms of the church and the service and the needs of a larger community, needs of marginalized people in the community.
I understand all that.
That's just, I'm not saying.
Right, no,
Just that.
that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is if we want to move into the future and we want more people to come here, younger people, to be attracted to our church. This would be one way to.
And what's the way to attract people to the church?
Well, I mean, they have to initially come. They're not gonna come because there's a pavilion, but it's just the younger generations are not like the older generations. And, this is the problem we have. I mean, we have the older generation who financially gives a lot more money to the church. And obviously we're skewing that way at this point. We don't have a ton of really young families. Yeah, you're right. There's no, I mean, yes, that might, I could also, we spent how much money on building plans for a project we never did, less than this. And this would actually give us a real benefit. Yes, it is money that we could spend it would do a lot of good in a lot of different areas, but it would also give us, we could also have events there where you could have outreach events there where you could bring people in. It's not the same as donating directly, I understand. But I guess we're hoping that,
I mean, the thing is, if we don't grow, we eventually die and then there is no money for anything.
I mean, this is a bit of a gamble. I mean, it would be a bit of a gamble that yes, that this is gonna be a real benefit to us, but I feel really passionate about it. Robert.
A couple of years ago, our denomination established some goals. And one of them was being Jesus in the community. And it's already been said at other meetings, this would be one way to do that. The outreach, the availability of the community groups, being able to use it, its access, its visibility, its welcome sign, part of what Julie was saying as well. So it's ministry, it's outreach, service as well.
Yes, Tim.
Yeah, and I think part of the outreach, there's a lot of people who just can't get themselves to go inside the church.
Yeah.
Just because whatever in their psychology, but they might come to a place outside that's not a formal church.
Right.
That they could go there for services and they would not have that feeling. And part of it's in the whole psychology, I think. And like you were talking about younger people, that it's that would be it would help to have something and people would hear, especially younger people, well, there's something we can do, like here are kids by the playground. And and it just seems to more like I'm a part of nature.
Well, someone might just stop for a cup of coffee initially and not come in for a couple months, but maybe eventually they might, but yeah, I understand your point, Julie, for sure. How to pay for it, we just.
I'm sure this is not a popular idea, but has there been thought about maybe a two-stage project, like first just building the roof part of it, building it in a way that you can add on to it at a later point, and look at it as a way of building something like that?
Yes, but I just think we decided that you're gonna be all in with all the upfront costs to begin with. And it doesn't make, that if you do it 5 years from now, it's gonna cost 25% more. I just think we thought we'd go for it. We thought about just 4 poles and a roof and a concrete pad and picnic tables, because that would serve some benefit. It would also, I like the idea of it being closed because it's not accessible all day, every day. We do, people come and hang out and leave their soda cans at the Memorial Garden and hang out there. And we'd like it. So yes, we have considered it and just thought that the cost savings would not be that great, and down the road, it would cost more. Yeah.
Yeah, Maury has a good option, but on the other side, permitting has a life. So once you get the municipal permit approvals, be it borough, the Lancaster County Planning Commission, right through, like you have a period of time now you need to build what you came to us asking permission to build. So permits have a life.
Right. Right. So, I mean, the options as far as,
Thinking
get
about what
that
they
one out.
said. Years ago, when George was on the staff, he established a coffee house in the basement, the fellowship hall of our church. And it drew so many young people from our community who would come here for that coffee house. And when he went to make a pastoral visit at Lancaster General, there was always a book that people signed up what their church was. And this man had signed up, his church was E-Town Church of Brethren. George didn't know him, but he went up to see him. He said, well, I don't come to your church, but my son comes to your coffee house. So, you know, I mean, hey, something like that could be a possibility.
Well, and we
for that
use,
building.
you know, when I was growing up in this church, I mean, as a, you know, elementary school kid, we used to do, every Sunday, we had breakfast here, where there was a group of maybe 10, 12 families, and you'd rotate who was responsible for breakfast. And we did it every week. And I you know, I remember that very clearly. I don't remember as many things as I should from my youth. I do remember that. I remember Ruthie West yelling at Rod Wright and I for, you know, playing basketball in the nursery with the waistband. I remember things like that. We were out of control. Boys,
And
but-
we had a youth club every Monday night.
And we had a youth club every Monday night. I mean, you know, obviously times have changed, but these are some things that could happen there.
You don't remember the sermons.
I don't want to, Ralph, I don't want to tell you where we were for the sermons, but the college used to have, you know, a bakery and video games. Sometimes Rod and I would sneak into the back and get a bullet and act like we were there. But we were there in spirit.
You're still here.
And I'm still here.
Listen, that happened in the sixties at the barn in the Keystone Diner.
Anyway, yeah, the options for paying for this are the same as they always are. I mean, yeah, one, you could fundraise, you know, are people tired of that? You could put Don in charge of fundraising. He loves that. I do think, and I've gotten very vocal support from some people about this project that, you know, I joke about selling naming rights because I know as brethren, we don't do that. But I do think I'm a little leery to do an actual fundraiser, but I guess there's no reason you couldn't throw it out as far as a possibility to people that we're considering this and as far as it would go specifically to this project. People are always very gracious. We could, you know, the other options are to use existing funds or to borrow the money. I know.
Just a question, we just fundraised for renovations and all that.
Yeah,
How
people
much-
just got done paying probably last year, their final installment of that.
So what was the goal of that fundraising project and how close to that goal did we achieve and stuff like that?
Close. I believe it all mostly came in. Even at the end of last year, there was a $300,000 donation that came in for that project, which was great considering that project didn't turn out to be what we had hoped it to be.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit under 4 million that was pledged, but that money basically that was pledged came in.
Right.
We had some
40,
differences.
50,000, and there was a debt in there, and that was the largest gap of why we didn't receive that money. But yeah, people were as good as their word, period.
And so I am a little leery in that regard as far as going back at people again. However, you know, and it wouldn't have to be a specific door-to-door campaign. It could just be, this is what we're planning to do. If you're interested in donating, I mean, we did that for the Fellowship Hall project and that was pretty minimal, but we probably got a couple tens of thousands for that.
Well, I think there's like 7,000 left in the conduit related to that. That has to be sort of contributed to pay it off. So That's sort of what remains
Right,
at this.
okay, okay. Yeah, I guess, you know, and this is just sort of my mentality that I'd like to see a way that, you know, we could partially fundraise. You know, we just got done repaying all of our special funds that weren't technically designated, you know, that was a little bit of a process to borrow from those funds, not knowing we were gonna actually repay them, but we did. But there's, you know, I don't know, in the facility fund, the facility fund obviously would be the main place you would go for this kind of money, but we may have 200.
Well, we have about 400,000 left in the facility
400?
at this point.
Looking brighter. Obviously, and now there are obviously restrictions on what we're allowed to spend without a special exception. I'd like to see maybe a way of, you know, maybe taking, you know, we could fundraise a little, we could take some from the facility fund. I feel weird about trying to rob the music fund. I mean, that's just doesn't seem
That wouldn't work.
the way we should, well, that's what we did before.
Well,
We
yeah,
borrowed.
we
It
put
was
it
a
all
little,
back.
that's creative financing is what
We
it is.
put it all back.
We did,
Pretty
but there's
much.
no guarantee that we would.
We could mandate singing graces out there.
And, you know, I know that we're averse to borrowing and interest rates aren't great. I know in the past that some church members have loaned money at reasonable rates back to the church. Is that a possibility? I don't know. I don't know if there's a way we can commingle all those ideas and somehow figure it out. Our thought from a resources perspective is that we were hoping, and once again, time is of the essence, to bring something to, and this probably is pushing it at this point, bring something to the November council meeting. And maybe at this point, it would just be an affirmation of building plans. You know, spending that money to have an actual set cost. Although I don't know that it's gonna be a lot different than what you have there, Jeff. I mean, there were some variables in there that could lessen the cost a little bit.
Yeah, when a professional architect designs it with everything it needs to be in, we just, you feel a lot better about the price when you know, okay, this is exactly what needs to be in versus, I think this needs to be in. I think I have enough.
Grantees will be soon decided. Required minimum distribution.
Right, distribution, well, and part of, you know, people are always overly generous here, especially for special projects. And we would hope it wouldn't take away from the general church budget because we always, you know, are fighting that tide as well. Julie.
There's the saying, build it and they will come. I think we need to be very intentional about programming. Now, that's not resources problem, that's a
Right.
board problem. That we be really intentional about programming for kinds of people we want to draw into this space.
Well, it also does add another aspect of it would be the continued management of it. Amy Zimmerman does a great job with the day-to-day here, but she lives in Lancaster. She's, you know, but she has 3 kids, so her hours are sort of 9 to 3 or 8 to 2, and so we would have to have some contingency set up there for if they're weekend events, for instance, you know, just like we would if there's a wedding or something, or, you know, that could be one of the caring ministry teams, Mike. You gotta add one to that. Another one. Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, just one other thing out there. Once you decide that, yes, we're going to do this, till it's built, is a minimum of 9 months. All right, just so you, just. keep that in mind.
Having it there next June.
No, you won't have a picnic there next year.
But our hope was that if it's gonna happen, that it would break ground next year. There are also some things for, as far as, you know, the road, Mount Joy Street was paved. I think the bond runs out in November. after 5, because otherwise you have to pay like an extra 5 or 10 grand. I call them extortion fees, but it's a break in the new road fee. Because it was a recently paved surface, so you know, this isn't something that would happen right away. Sorry, George, but.
Well, I just wanted to tell before we go, I appreciate, your work and Jeff's work on developing this. I think it gives substance to, the narrative of the tent in our fellowship. And the tent's gone and the tables are gone, but there are a lot of narratives that I remember from that experience. So thank you for.
Sure, thank you. No, we have, we've thought about it for a couple weeks. I mean, since the 10th, we've been thinking about it. And so this is sort of the fruition of that. And, I guess I'd ask for some guidance from those here. I mean, and Kevin, from a board perspective, how we, I guess in my mind, it makes sense to move forward with getting actual architectural plans. Obviously, if it doesn't happen, that's money out the door, but we've gone through this before. This is actually pretty minimal expense to get to that point where we could actually get real prices. And at that point, obviously, we need to go to a council. We may need to do that for a council vote anyway.
And I'm just kind of curious, an informal poll, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumb in the middle, where everybody kind of feels about this. Thumbs up, thumbs down. When we did the CAT survey, or when the CAT survey came out, and it talked about the 3 things that we really need to be focused on. One is attracting young families. And the other one was renewing and recommitting and revitalizing our outreach in the community. In the community, sometimes when I hear the word community, I think local, but I also think global too. So this would be local. And then the third thing is, to expand our outreach, which I think we just do I think that's probably the one where of those 3 that we're the strongest on, with what we do. Yeah. And this kind of fits in all 3 of those. So it's what the CAT surveys, it's kind of saying, not saying it's say, hey, yeah, go build a pavilion, but it is affirming that it fits in all those 3 categories. And it's something that I'm seeing people giving thumbs up on. We should move forward. We should take the next step, whatever that is. And maybe you have to do, figure out that money piece of it. But get this to council. I don't know if it'll be this upcoming, probably again, maybe just
the full plan would not be ready. That's too soon. But just as far as moving to the next step, do we need to have that confirmed at council? Does that need to be a council vote?
I think it would do a couple different things. Just having that affirmation, it would be a commitment somewhat. If that's what congregation wants to do, are we committed to this? Are we affirming this? Yes or no? And if not, well then, okay, we learned a little bit about what it would cost and what it would do to build a pavilion. But what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing and what people are coming up to me is that they're very excited about this. So.
Yeah. I don't know if Julie meant it this way, but the tagline for campaign or building it is, build it and they will come. It's catchy. It's catchy.
That's all I have. Are there any other questions?
First of all, thank you for all the work you did and Jeff did and other people did. We really appreciate having smart people work at this kind of a project. So first of all, thank you very much. Second, there was only about 20 people here at best this morning. And this is just a peewee group. And I think we need a way to have a report or explore this with a larger group, but without a decision, not asking for any, but just think about this.
We had talked about, Now, Jason will say that this is available online, you know, but who's gonna go watch it online? A couple of people, but we had talked about having another session just similar to this. And we could do that.
Yeah, it needs to be a bigger group
Right, I
somehow.
mean, sometimes we do get accused of, of making decisions without people really being aware of it. Now, we try,
We're not trying
I've tried to
yeah.
put stuff in the newsletter but not everyone goes and reads their newsletter. And so,
Finally, I think we can do it financially. I don't think it's a financial problem. I think there are a good number of people in this room that could help make it happen. So I'd be optimistic that we can do it.
I think Julie's point's a good one, that we need to, at the same time this is going forward, think about how are we gonna use it. I mean, there's so many ideas that came up that used to happen, but don't happen anymore. How can we
so
reinstitute?
be
some of this?
purposeful about making sure those things happen.
And that should be happening at the same time as this building.
So let me say something that is happening that I can envision. I don't speak for the whole group that plans the prison classes for LGBTQ youth in this community. I do participate in it. I have been there with the kids. Coming in from a parking lot into a huge building, into a small room all by itself in the church on Friday night would be a very different thing to be in the pavilion and say, this is for our community and all the youth in the community who need a place, a safe place for LGBTQ youth. And that's a current thing that would, I think it would enliven.
Wouldn't feel as tight.
Right? And you'd have space.
We're our youth class.
Well, we're already talking about getting a second youth class. Jason can speak to that, but we're just beginning to wonder where are we gonna put that class? Yeah. To split it in two.
And
Just one more thing. There's so many projects that are built, capital projects, and you put building up and so forth. But then one thing Peggy and I have noted is there's no indication of the annual operating costs. Now, I think probably with this project, they're minimal, okay? But you build these Taj Mahals or whatever, and nobody thinks, well, how do you pay for it on an annual basis? So that should be plugged in someplace. I think it's probably minimal.
And Damon's idea isn't a bad idea, especially if we could get some kind of, I don't know if this still even breaks on solar, but if there's some way we could almost just pay for electricity plus.
The solar works great. It's a southern exposure. The solar works great.
Well, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Now, I'm saying that this
That is southern
is a
exposure.
southern exposure on one
Right.
side of it. The solar works perfect.
So, but yeah, you're right. And I think that's why we were trying to stay away from a full, another HVAC system and not, I have, like at my shop, I call it a blow heater. It's just a gas heater up in the corner. We put a couple of those in. It blow good. It heats up my space really. My shop's 30 by 50. It heats it up really fast. Get a little something. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks, Kurt.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I haven't thought about it to be sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.